H.A.T format takes us back to the summer of 2014, in an era before Pendulum and Links, where the XYZ monsters reigned supreme. H.A.T format is at the tail end of the Sexal era, and it ended with a blast. At this point in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, Soul Charge was just released, allowing players not only to create impressive boards, but also to pick apart said boards, in so-called Soul Charge wars. Negates are few and far between, thus making such wars very interactive and skillful to navigate. Card lore is at its all-time high, to the depths of the Mermail Atlanteans, to the sky of the Dragon Rulers, to questionable artworks. The flavor and uniqueness of the cards in this era are one of my favorites. This is H.A.T format.
If you come from Master Duel or modern Yu-Gi-Oh, luckily this format is very easy to get into. The Beware of Trap Tricks structure deck has nearly every card you need to complete the base core of the hands, artifacts, and trap tricks deck. What are the decks of H.A.T format? As we talked about in the introduction, you have the artifact trap trick variant, which utilizes either the hands for H.A.T, Card D for Cat, Curry Bandit for Cat, not to be confused with Cat, and the Fire Fists for Fat. To touch more a bit about the artifact trap tricks deck, either you could use the hands, the Fire Fists, or either Curry Bandit or Card D as a supplementary engine. This deck is really just a pile of good cards. All of these cards are pretty standalone. Sure, for the hands, you would need to play both of them, usually in pairs of 2 or 3 copies, so you have enough grind game with them. With the Fire Fist card, you need to play some amount of Tanky Bear, perhaps Gorilla and Wolf Bark. Another control deck you could play is the Yugioh deck. This deck focuses on making Gear Gigant X, as well as other rank 4s, by using armor as a +1 every single turn, and trap cards to control the field. At the time, this was the best control deck ever printed. However, with limitations done to the deck, seeing as Spellbook of Judgment was banned and Spellbook of Fate was limited, the deck is not as powerful as it was in 2013. Having tutors such as Spellbook of Secrets and Blue Boy being able to grab your Spellbook engine, as well as not being special summon reliant, so cards like Max C does not affect you at all. This is one of the better control decks if you want to play a game plan where you draw a bunch of cards and use spell card to disrupt your opponent. Now, we cannot talk about H.A.T format without mentioning the Soul Charge decks. The first one being Mermails. Mermail is the best mid-rangey Soul Charge deck, where you have a bunch of trap cards in your deck so you can stop at any moment without feeling that you lose the game. The Mermail deck plays a lot more defensive cards than something like Infernity, Sylvan, or Dragon Rulers, so you have more stopping points against Max C, giving you an edge there. This is probably one of the more impressive Soul Charge decks, being Sylvan's. Opening Lone Fire with Soul Charge gives you a wide array of options, being able to combat fields but also create your own. This deck being able to play key starters like Curry Bandit gives it a leg up against Infernity and Dragon Rulers, and its ceiling is much higher than that of Mermails. However, it does lose harder to Max C. At the 2014 World Championship, with severe limitations being done to Mermail and Sylvan having a lot of TCG exclusives, the best combo deck at that event was Infernity. Even in H.A.T format, this deck is very strong, being able to set up multiple Infernity breaks along with the Soul Infernity Barrier, while also utilizing the rank 4 toolbox to its full extent, having long sequences of looping Laval Volchain, direwolfing your own cards to bring it all back with Soul Charge just to get more searches off of Archfiend. If you enjoy the rank 4 toolbox along with a combo deck, this deck is just for you. Since its release in 2013, Dragon Rulers have dominated the Yu-Gi-Oh metagame up until their banning in 2015. This deck is very strong, being able to utilize Soul Charge along with cards like Curry Bandit in the Mythic Ruler deck, fueling up your graveyard and allowing for big Soul Charge pushes. Or playing the deck with the Heretics and instead focusing on making a ton and having a more streamlined deck where you don't focus on milling well with Curry Bandit or Card Ds and instead focus on using your hand in the strongest way possible and then following up with a Soul Charge. Dragon Rulers were so powerful that you can even utilize them in other decks. Lightsworn, with the power of Eclipse Wyvern, could search Judgment Dragon out from the deck. Having Soul Charge, fueling up the graveyard from the Lightsworn cards, bringing it all back for a very strong push, makes this the best mill deck in H.A.T format. If you enjoy the control aspect, but spellbooks are not for you, Bujin is a great option. Bujin Yamato allows you to cycle through a new Bujin every single turn at the end phase. Protecting Yamato is the game plan. Having cards like Bujin Harume to allow for explosive rank 4 plays with Bujin Carnation as a pseudo soul charge within the deck gives the deck longevity. If you enjoy the artifact cards but don't want to commit to the other cards we recently talked about, Constellars is a good option. Utilizing the artifacts along with Call of the Haunted, giving you a card that you can bounce back every single turn with Pallades and keep using the artifacts on your opponent's turn, perhaps putting them under a Scythe lock or Molotag popping their cards incrementally every single turn, is exactly how Constellars wins its games. If you enjoy the sweet taste of victory, Madolche might just be the deck for you. Even years after Hat format, Tiramisu was commonly referred to as the best rank 4 ever printed. Non-target shuffle back 2 of your opponent's cards and recycling your own resources gives this deck a very strong push and one of the best starters in the format in Angeli. Now for the rogue category, the first deck is Evil Swarms. Similar to Bujins, where you summon Yamato, in Evil Swarm you summon Ophion and use Ophion's effect to control the game state. Particularly against decks with high level monsters such as Dragon Rulers or Sylvans, Ophion locking out their special summoning is how you win most of your games. If you want to take advantage of Heavy Storm's banning and use a card that perfectly punishes your opponent for overextending with trap cards that are not easily chainable, Harpies is the deck for you. This deck can play Icarus Attack along with the obvious Harpy field spell to pop your opponent's spells and traps, and controlling the game with the rank 4 toolbox, seeing as Chandler can bring out Harpy's pet dragon directly from your deck and make a Draco sack on turn 1. Resolving the spell card Hysteric Sign gives you almost an immediate auto win, seeing as it searches you 3 Harpies in the end phase, giving you a lot of recursion and follow-up for the next turn. The most interesting Hat format deck based on lore is the Noble Knights. This is an equip-focused deck where you want to make your Noble Knight XYZ monsters into large indestructible objects beating down your opponent. For the more casual combo player, you have Karakuri. However, you could definitely play these cards with the Yugioh deck, seeing as Geargiant X can search your Karakuris, and making Bure and Buredo with your Yugioh monsters gives you very large pushes as opposed to just having the rank 4 toolbox in the Yugioh deck. With the Dragon Rulers all being limited to 1, this deck is a lot weaker than it was in 2013, but you still have access to a lot of great synchro monsters in the form of Vajrayana being able to climb up to a level 8, or with Gay Dirge being able to search you Sephiroth or Baby Rock to continue cobbing from there and making large fields with Soul Charge. Scraps finally received their field spell in the form of Scrap Factory. This is an interesting control deck where you destroy your own cards to gain advantage. Dark World is the best draw deck of the format. If you like drawing cards, this deck is just for you. Being able to utilize cards like Deck Devastation Virus and Eradicator, Epidemic Virus being good against almost every single meta deck. Another deck from Yu-Gi-Oh's history being Insectors, winning the 2012 World Championships, again gets new light with this format. This is an OTK deck where you use Insector Hornet and Dragonfly to destroy your opponent's entire field and build your own with Soul Charge. And for my favorite rogue deck, we have Blackwings. Blackwings received support in Dragons of Legend in the form of Squall and a couple of other cards that were printed throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history after Edison, as well as being able to use cards like Icarus Attack, punishing your opponent for over-committing to the board with cards they cannot chain. If you're coming from Edison format, you can definitely take your Blackwing deck, perhaps upgrading it with some of the new cards that were released, and still do well at your local tournaments. Now that was a lot to take in. There's a lot of decks in Hat format, but what are the best ones? To break it down in something that resembles a tier list, this is what I would consider our decks that are able to win a major event. You have the Artifact Trap Tricks variants, these either with Hands, Curry Bandit, Card D, or the Fire Fist cards. You have Spellbooks, Geargiah, Mermail, and Sylvans. These are the decks that are good enough to top a major event, and you should expect to see these in Top Cut. We have Infernity, Dragon Ruler variants in the form of Mythics or Heretics, Fujin, and Madolche. This is the final category of decks. These are Constellars, Lightsworn, Evil Swarm, Harpy, Blackwing, Karakuri, Noble Knights, Dragoonity, Scrap, Insector, and Dark World. If you enjoy my content, make sure to also subscribe to my second channel, linked in the description box down below.